I'm Sam Keller. The future is also always built from elements from the present, so yes, there is very visible. The far future we don't know, but what we know is that the museums over the last 200 years has been institutions that have been able to adapt to the changes in time. And especially, I would say, now in the 21st century, it's amazing how the museums adapt to artists working in new forms and new media, how they're dealing with the digital revolution, how they're dealing with globalization, how they're adapting to the situation that governments budgets are restricted, and many governments are less and less willing to support art in a big way, and how the need of society to learn about art, because not everyone learns about it at school. Actually, most people need museums to not just to be entertained, but actually to be educated. I think museums are very good. They're like they're part of the evolution in society. Actually, they play, I think, a more important role than ever, because they're not trying not to be an ivory tower. They're really trying to be connected to society and close to artists and what they're thinking. So I'm very positive that the museums actually are important part of that change, and they will be able to change and adapt themselves. But museums are big boats. They're not like little speedboats that can every season, follow all the trends and all the hype. But they shouldn't. They should not, because what makes museums special is with one leg they're in the present, but also with one leg they're in the past. They make sure that we remember the past, and we remember the things from the present are going to be remembered in the future as the past. So they need to have this broad scope. So, in my view, the museums have to think about where the limits of what they can do and want to do. Because society loves museums and wants the museums to do more and more, but the resources are limited, and also museums don't have the expertise to do everything. Museums can't be responsible for politics, for example. They can give platforms, but they cannot, I'd say, do what politics is not doing. The museums can help artists, but they cannot create artworks. Maybe not the best place to be the place for the creation of artworks. I think now also a lot of other art forms are invited in museums. A lot of performance and dance. We do it at the Keller, music and so, which is always very good when it's connected to art and helps the understanding of art. The question is, at one point, when do you kind of get too far away from your core mission if you do all these other things? Also, when it comes to education, of course, it's our job to educate people about art. But then now you see a lot of programs that are further and further away from the education about art. I think that's one of the challenges also now with the internet. You can do so many things on the internet, but what are the meaningful things? What are the things that really help the understanding of art? And so I think this is the biggest challenge. It's a big, wide open field, and the museums are challenged to find out, each one for themselves, what is really the core of our mission? What can we do? What can we experiment with? But also, how do we best use our limited resources? Censorship is bad. We know from history there's never been a good time when art was censored. So why should it be different now? And this is also a new situation that hasn't been in our generation. We haven't gone through that in Europe, that there is demands from left and right and all kind of minorities against museum, to display art. I remember we were doing an exhibition with Maurizio Cattelan and having a shitstorm from animal activists, although they never informed themselves, and we provided information that these animals, stuffed animals he'd used, that they had died naturally and nothing had been done to them. They didn't care. They used the museum to advocate for their cause, and they didn't care about the artists. And you know, we've seen what happened to the Metropolitan Museum with the Balthus. So we're very happy to do a Balthus exhibition this year at Fondation Bayero, because we don't think everyone has to agree with all the artists. Not everyone has to like all the artwork. You can criticize it, but no, in order to criticize it properly, it has to be there. I think it should be on public display so the public can build its own opinion. And what is wrong is to say, we don't like it, we want to have it out of our view. This is today a danger. A lot of people want to live in a bubble and they only want to see what they like. And the internet helps us with this. You know, it just feeds us the information that we like, just the music we like and everything, and only the messages from the friends we like. So at the end, we live in we end up living in a pseudo world, where we have the illusion that everything is okay, but it's not. So we have art also needs conflict, and it's normal also that there's polemics about art. But the museum art is kind of platform that make it possible for very different audiences to come together and say, yes, we can live in a society together where we disagree. Yeah, but we can live together. We don't have to kill each other. We don't have to say you have to disappear just because I have a different opinion. And I think that is it's something we have to fight for. That we have an open, democratic society where everyone has a voice, and the artists have a right to show. They have their work shown. They don't have a right to have it liked, you know, and understood, but at least to have it shown. So yes, I also think the museums have to stand together for that, because now what we see is always an attack against one artist or one museum or one museum directors. But I think we have to stand together and say, this is really fascistoid, this is bad, you know. It's not just because we're concerned, we're all concerned by this. The consequences of this kind of thinking are tragic and terrible for society, yes. Selling of art, I think, is a big misunderstanding. Where does it come from? Often it's some politicians or businessmen that are on a board of a museum, and they think the museum has a financial struggle, and now we're going to sell something from the collection and then the problems are solved. That's an illusion. First of all, the only thing that bring you a lot of money are the best pieces in the collection. So, but a collection is defined by its most important works also. So when selling the best pieces, you know, you devaluate everything, and that is bad. And it doesn't work the other way around. To sell the things which you're never going to show because you think they're not good, they also don't bring you any money. Also, I think a collection is something that grows in a strange way. It's like a jungle, you know, how things come together. And everything is connected with each other. And when you take a piece out, you kind of cut all these connections, and you cut part of the history. I think it's not good, because maybe our generation, we think this is really important for us. But I'm already old enough to know what was important what is important for me 10 years ago is not so important for me now. And there were some things that 20 years ago I despised it and said, this is really not good. And now I think they are relevant, maybe because the time has changed, maybe because I have myself changed and evolved. And so I think this happens also with works in collection. And we go back in history, there were times that Caspar David Friedrich, one of the greatest German artists, he was not one work displayed in the museum, they were all in storage. Vermeer, the same, many artists, El Greco, many artists that today we think they're the masters. There were generations that they were not shown and not considered important. So who are we to say, for the future generation, what is really important? Let them make their own choices. I think this is our collective memory collection, and we don't want to cut something out just for a short-term solution. And it's only a short-term solution because if you sell now, the money is going to be spent in 5 years, and what you have then you don't have the art and you don't have the money. No, I think it's not good. Maybe it should be allowed that sometimes you're trading, you're exchanging, or the American museums, they allow you to sell something, some artworks, to buy other artworks, which is maybe a good thing, because if you receive a donation of 100 works by the same artist, maybe you need only 90, and with the 10 other ones you can actually buy some of the artists related to that artist. That makes the collection more meaningful. But I don't think strongly against selling art just to finance your operating budget. I think it's wrong, and I don't know positive examples where it has been done. I think every museum is different, and thanks God the museums are different, because as in nature, we need a lot of biodiversity, and we need the same cultural diversity. So every museum has a different situation. I can talk about mine. I know for other museum directors, they told me we couldn't do Balthus in this time. We would get so much pressure from politicians and the board. But the museums, of course, they have to be cautious, but there are spaces for freedom. There should be things possible in museums that are not possible otherwise in society, that they're kind of a laboratory where certain things can grow and be tried out. And so I'm fighting for that. In our country, I must say, I'm very lucky. In Switzerland, there's a lot of understanding that, yes, the museum needs this freedom, and artistic freedom is a high value for our society. So I'm also very lucky that I have a board who is not interfering in the programming. I'm informing the board. I also told the board we're going to do Balthus, and we're going to have a lot of controversy. We're not going to be liked by everyone for it, but it's an artist that is important, and it's an artist that is now in the public debate. So there's nothing better to do than to show the works, so people actually know what they're talking about. So yes, I'm lucky that I've never had any artwork censored, and we could go very far. Even we show what the digital media, the social medias are forbidding. So you cannot put Courbet's Origin of the World on Instagram or on Facebook, and so yes, we showed it in the museum so people can actually see it. And same with contemporary art. But we're not there just provoking people. I think the most important thing I learned from Ernst Beil, the founder of our museum, is always go for quality. Always go for quality, and other things, then you can also defend things, you can go through all the struggle, go for quality. Now, of course, it's difficult always to define what is quality, but this is also what the experience makes, that you recognize it more easily. I have the highest respects of my colleague who is museum director. I could never have imagined what a difficult job it actually is, and even more maybe in a public institution. It is really between everything internally, how complex it is, with everything in your world, and then politics. It's true that museums are loved, but they're also very much observed, and people have different opinions how they should be, and different demands to the museum. They're increasing, they're exponentially increasing. And so yes, it is, it's a time where also it takes you years to make all the experiences it needs to be a museum director, and then it takes 5 minutes for the public opinion to kick you out because they don't like one thing that you do. Yeah, and it happens more and more. Sometimes it's just surreal politics and crazy things. Sometimes it's also because there's a shift of ever evolving shift of values, of how things are done, should be done, and then it happens that some people don't read the signs of the times. I do too many, too many. But I think it's also important as a museum director to have, for a museum in general, to have a lot of connections to society. And this can be scientifically and professionally, but this could be in many other places. So yes, I'm very happy to serve since a number of years on the board of the Musée d'Orsay, for example, which is a museum I love in Paris, and of the board of several foundations. I'm also helping some big companies that collect art or commission artists, how to do this. And then I'm also sometimes just helping people who are building up something to lend my name to be on a committee where I'm not really working, but maybe they ask me to give it some help by this, just some advice. Yeah, but there's a lot of requests to do it, and our lifetime is limited, so I wish I could do more and help more, but I still have to do my job. Yes, and I'm also on the board, of course, of Art Basel, which still is not so much work anymore, but still takes every now and then some time. But the most important thing is to keep these relationships with artists. There's no boards for that, and actually, this is what museum people, and especially the directors, they should have more time to really spend with the artists, because this is the center of everything we're doing. The founder of Art Basel, one of the founders, there were 3 founders, but the most important one who made it a success is Ernst Beiler. He had a gallery, but him and his wife were also collectors, and they have opened in 1997 a museum called Fondation Beiler, built by Renzo Piano, beautiful building in the park. And he was a mentor of mine, and already when I was working at Art Basel, I was often looking for his advice, and we became friends. And at one point he asked me if I would be willing to run this museum, which came as a surprise to me. But then when I gave it some thought, I said, originally I studied art history, and originally I started to work in a museum. At that time, museums were not so interested in contemporary art, and I was young and impatient, and I didn't want to learn about art only from books. I wanted to learn from seeing, and so the art market was a good place to learn a lot. But I have never sold artwork. I've never been a dealer. What I really care about is to create, to show art, and to be helpful for more people to get in contact with art. So I think the museum is actually the best environment for an artwork, and the best environment for a visitor to learn about art. So I felt I'm still a bit young and maybe not experienced enough, but he said, no, you have a lot to learn, but you can do it. So I said, okay, give me 3 more years and then I'll be there. He said, you can do it in 2. So 2 years later, I I moved from directing Art Basel to directing the Beyeler Foundation. Well, when I was a young student, I started actually to work for art magazines. They asked me to help them out in some galleries and so. My first proper job for Art Basel was to organize the party for the 25th anniversary, as they had heard that I was organizing some illegal parties, and so they asked me to help them. And yeah, I did, together with some friends. And then the communications director left, and they just needed someone, and so I did that to help them out for a season, and I ended up working there for 14 years. As you rightfully say, everything is a process. So Art Basel has, since the beginning, always tried to create special platforms for art that is important, but is not necessarily shown at an art fair, difficult to show an art fair. So whether for young artists or in the early days for photography or for video and film or for sculpture work. And I remember having a conversation with a gallery, young gallery, saying, you know, the difficulty in an art fair is on this small space that is expensive. We cannot show some of the work of our artists. Maybe sometimes because it's technically not possible, but sometimes also financially. It made me think that yes, it's true that there's a lot of artists, they work in a format that is not ideal in the booth of an art fair. Conceptually also sometimes it's wrong, or the context is wrong. So I was thinking, what can we do? And so we had a new hall next to Art Basel, and we developed the idea to create a platform for all the works that are better shown in a form of, you could say, an exhibition, or in a where it's not on a booth of a gallery, where everything is built around, the architecture is built around the artwork. So that's especially for large-scale installations and sculptures, for video and film, but also for performances. And in the beginning, people told me, yes, yeah, it's a good idea, but like, who's going to buy that? I said, I don't know. But if art is created, it's also our obligation to give it a platform, to show it. And hopefully someone will then buy it, and what actually turned out that yes, it became a platform that the artists liked very much. They showed really important works, and over the years also more not only institutions but also private individuals, they're buying this work, and so I think it's one of the most exciting places to see artworks, really. Well, it was teaching me a good lesson in life. Humbling experience that you can plan everything, and everything looks fine, and from one day to the other the world is upside down and you're in trouble. So I remember coming to the office, and my colleague saying, oh, something happened, we have to turn on the TV. And the first tower has been hit, and just as we were watching the second hitting, and we knew this is bad news for New York, for the world, and also we're going to be affected. So for a couple of months we thought we could continue. We tried our best, but at the end, if you have half of the people wanting and half of the people being scared, from one day to the other, everything can look okay, and then everything is not okay anymore. And then you have to work really hard to continue. Museum expansions are a tricky thing. I'm a bit critical of them, and when I came to Fondation Beyeler, I said, this museum is so perfect, I never want to do an expansion. But then you learn that things grow, and especially if they're successful, they grow. And at one point, you need more space, but not just more space. You need also to evolve conceptually. So our museum was originally built to publicly show a collection. It expanded already after 2 years when it started to have a regular exhibition program. At that time, what was not so well thought about, maybe was not so important at the time, was the whole education part and cultural events part. So we don't have an auditorium, we don't have we have to do all the programming, whether in the garden, and the weather in Switzerland is not always good, or we have to do it in galleries. So already our founder had thought about doing additional buildings, for example, for them. So number one for the expansion is that we need, we're going to build a pavilion. It's during the day a social space, and then in the evening a place for cultural events, concerts, artist talks, performances, all of this. The second thing is the concept of the collection of Fondation Bayerler is not to have 10% on view and the rest is in storage. The collection concept is to have a rather small collection, but have everything displayed. Maybe not at the same time, but over 2 or 3 years. Because all the works, without an exception, are museum quality. So the museum has now over 300 works, and it's no more possible to do there. And there are many artists, artist estates, collectors. They love this museum, and they would like to donate works or give long-term loan to this museum. And we want, and we do, collect more, and we want to have this art work shown. So we need more space to display art. Not to do more exhibitions, but actually to have more variety how we can work with the collection. Maybe do things more long term. Yeah. And the third thing is what makes the Bayerler very special is the relationship to nature. So it's not only a great art collection, a beautiful building, but there's always this connection to nature. It's surrounded like by a beautiful landscape, and it's in a very idyllic garden. And the expansion is 100% more garden by the same landscape architect with 100 years of beautiful trees. So it's also about giving visitors the opportunity to experience art together with nature. And if a museum is so successful and busy, we also want to be able to provide at the same time active and contemplative moments in the museum. And social spaces that can be used differently, and different ways, also more experimental ways how to display art, especially the collection. So these are the main things. So I'm very excited about it. It's going to be beautiful. And the architect we have selected is Peter Zumthor, and I think he's just one of the finest architects working today, and just perfect for this site. Also, although he's an award-winning, internationally known artist, architect, he's originally from Basel in Switzerland, and he's never built a museum in Basel, or never built any buildings in Basel. So he's very excited and committed to do that, because it's kind of a coming home.